USA Patriot Act. On September 11, 2011, terrorist organization Al-Qaeda hijacked four passenger airplanes in the United States and turned them into flying bombs, coordinating attacks on major US landmarks. The attack resulted in about 3,000 deaths, the destruction of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. It was the most fatal attack on the US soil since Pearl Harbor. In a quick response, the US Congress passed the Uniting and Strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism Act of 2001, aka USA Patriot Act. The bill was passed so quickly, also very long and very dense. It was questioned that few lawmakers had read it in full before they voted for it. The law became so controversial and has raised many questions about the extent to which government agencies should be able to collect information about individuals in the United States without first obtaining a search warrant. The provision of the Patriot Act. The provision of the Patriot Act fall into four principal categories: providing federal law enforcement and intelligence officials with greater authority to monitor communications, giving the Secretary of the Treasury greater powers to regulate banks, preventing them from being used to launder foreign money, making it more difficult for terrorists to enter the United States, defining new crimes and penalties for terrorist activity. In the same concern about the moral decisions of the government in terms of communication surveillance, we're going to discuss how those provisions affect the privacy of American people. The Patriot Act allows police to use pen registers on the internet to track email addresses and URLs without demonstration of probable cause. Pen registers are surveillance devices that capture the phone numbers dialed on outgoing telephone calls. Trap and trace devices capture the numbers identifying incoming calls. To obtain a warrant, police simply certify that the information to be gained is relevant to an ongoing criminal investigation. The Patriot Act extends the jurisdiction of court-ordered wiretaps to the entire country. For example, a judge in New York can authorize the installation of a device in California. The Patriot Act allows roving surveillance to be performed for the purpose of intelligence, and the government doesn't have to prove that the person under investigation actually uses the device to be tapped. And the law enforcement agency is not required to report back to the authorizing judge regarding the number of devices monitored and the results of the monitoring. Law enforcement officials wishing to intercept communications to and from a person who has illegally gained access to a computer system do not need a court order if they have permission of the owner of the computer system. They are allowed to search a person's premises without first serving a warrant. They may seize property that constitute evidence of a criminal offense in violation of the laws of the United States, even if that offense is unrelated to terrorism. A national security letter is a law enforcement investigative tool similar to a subpoena and most commonly issued by the FBI. National security letters are used to obtain information from companies as part of national security-related investigations. They allow the FBI and, in limited circumstances, other federal agencies to demand that companies turn over data about their customers' use of services such as banking, telephone, and internet usage records. The Patriot Act expanded the use of national security letters, making it easier for the FBI to collect internet, business, medical, educational, library and church, mosque, and synagogue records. To obtain a search warrant authorizing the collection of records about an individual, the FBI merely needs to issue a national security letter stating that the records are related to an ongoing investigation. National security letters are controversial because, unlike warrants, they do not require the approval of a judge. Between 2003 and 2006, the FBI issued 192,499 national security letters. Responses to the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act has become the subject of a lot of criticism and debate. The concern that its provision gives too many powers to the federal government, thereby reducing the rights of law-abiding Americans, particularly those rights expressed in the First and Fourth Amendments to the U.S. Constitution. The First Amendment centers around the freedom of speech and the free exercise of religion. The Fourth Amendment protects people's right to privacy and freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures by the government. In general, most warrantless searches of private premises are prohibited under the Fourth Amendment, unless specific exception applies. For instance, a warrantless search may be lawful if an officer has asked and is given consent to search. If the search is incident to a lawful arrest, if there is a probable cause to search, and there is exigent circumstance calling for the warrantless search. Exigent circumstances exist in situations where people are in imminent danger, where evidence faces imminent destruction, or prior to a suspect's imminent escape. In January 2003, the Council of the American Library Association passed a resolution on Patriot Act that affirms every person's rights to inquiry and free expression. More than 400 cities and several states have also passed anti-Patriot Act resolutions. With the issues of national security letters, Google is an obvious organization for law enforcement agencies to contact, given the significant amount of information it collects from individuals who use its search engine. In 2009, Google CEO Eric Schmidt told CNBC, "If you have something that you don't want anyone to know, maybe you shouldn't do it in the first place." He admitted Google is obliged to release personal data to law enforcement agencies. Now I have a question for you. Smith's statement sounds like, if you do nothing wrong, you have nothing to hide. Do you agree with his statement? In a different event, Smith blacklisted CNET reporters from Google after the tech news company published an article with information about his salary, neighborhood, hobbies, and political donations. Did he have double standards in terms of privacy protection when his personal information was made public? Successes and failures. Success. The Patriot Act has helped the government in its fight against terrorism by allowing greater information sharing among law enforcement and intelligence agencies, and by giving law enforcement new investigation tools. 361 individuals were charged. 191 of them have been convicted or pled guilty. 500 individuals linked to the 9/11 attacks have been removed from the U.S. Terrorist cells in Buffalo, Seattle, Tampa, and Portland have been broken up. Failure. A few innocent bystanders have been affected by the war against terrorism. After a bomb in Madrid, Spain exploded, killing 191 people and wounding more than 2,000 others, the Spanish government retrieved a partial fingerprint from a bag of detonators, and the FBI linked the fingerprint with Brendan Mayfield, an attorney in Portland, Oregon. Without revealing their search warrant, FBI agents secretly entered Mayfield's home multiple times, making copies of documents and computer hard drives, collecting 10 DNA samples, removing 6 cigarette butts for DNA analysis, taking 355 digital photographs. The FBI also put Mayfield under electronic surveillance. After the Spanish government announced that it had matched the fingerprints to Unan Daoud, an Algerian national living in Spain, a judge ordered that Mayfield be released. The FBI publicly apologized for the fingerprint misidentifications. Some civil rights groups suggest Mayfield was targeted by the FBI because of his religious beliefs. Mayfield sued the U.S. government for continuing to investigate him after the Spanish government had eliminated him as a suspect, and in November 2006, the government issued a formal apology and agreed to pay him $2 million. long-standing NSA access to telephone records. On June 5, 2013, the British newspaper The Guardian revealed that, based on the request from the FBI, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court (FISC) had ordered Verizon to provide the National Security Agency on a daily basis records of all its customers' calls from April 25, 2013 to July 19, 2013. The order from FISC expressly prohibited Verizon from revealing to the public the FBI request for this information. The Obama administration downplayed the revelation and held that the data collection was authorized under Section 215 of the Patriot Act. In May 2015, the federal court in New York ruled that the NSA's program to collect customers' telephone call records in bulk was illegal. It is unreasonable to interpret Section 215 of the Patriot Act as authorizing the bulk collection of telephone calling records. Conclusion: privacy is a fundamental human right, but the U.S. Constitution does not express it explicitly, but through its derivation and interpretation in the Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. Critics argue that the Patriot Act was unconstitutional because it violated the Fourth Amendment. They kept us skeptic about the connection between the outcome of the war against terrorism and this act. They also expressed concerns about the agents using the act inconsistently with its original purpose, thereby eroding the value of these fundamental human rights, as well as silencing voices of political and religious dissent. And here are the references. Thank you.